Hi guys, it's Igor here again from the Hypnosis Training Academy, and I'm here to share with you today the keys to influence. Now, if you've already been watching this series, you'll have got a bit about hypnotic rapport and how important it is to keep them talking. Now, whilst they're talking, how are you going to influence them? How are you going to use the information that they give you to be of influence? And how are you going to shape the conversation so that the information that you need comes out? Well, first of all, you need to know what kind of information you're looking for. So this leads us to the keys that I want to share with you today. These keys are particularly important when any kind of negotiation is taking place. You see, there's two schools of thought when it comes to negotiating. There's the academic school and there's the in the trenches school. What's the academic school about? Well, that's the sort of Harvard Business School and the kind of approach you'd learn there. That's known as the rationalist school of negotiation. The idea there is that people are rational people, and then you can negotiate with them to a win-win. If we go, well, this is technically known as splitting the difference. If you and I both want something, I want to sell you something, you want to buy something, you offer me $100, I say $200, and we split the difference. We say, all right, let's agree on 150. That sounds like a rational choice. And of course, if that is the approach you take, then all kinds of games can be played with that. You say $100, I might say $500, knowing that we'll agree around $250 or $200, and it feels like splitting the difference, but it really isn't. Now, I just used a very important word there, the word feels. This, you see, is the secret to true hypnotic influence, and particularly hypnotic negotiations. Because the second school, the down in the trenches school, the one that the everyday influences, the one whose bread and butter relies on being strong influences, they all know something very important that academics don't pay as much attention to. And that is that feelings persuade, emotions persuade. So you have the rational school, that's all about the win-win by splitting the difference. You want something, I want something, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. In the emotional school, though, that whole equation changes around. Because in the emotional school, well, it's actually winner takes all. You take everything. If you're negotiating, and I help your emotions get to the right place, you don't care so much more about the rational basis of the negotiation. You just are grateful. You just like it so much. You are happy with pretty much whatever happens. So let's look at it this way. The rational school appeals to the conscious mind, the intellect. So these things are happening now. Well, let's split the difference, and it's a reasonable way. I'm a reasonable man, you're a reasonable man, and well, we'll do business together. Now, that's fine as far as it goes. And by the way, you can include these kinds of ideas when doing hypnotic negotiations too, of course. But in the emotional school, the down in the trenches schools, we know that if I take care of you as a human being, as an individual, if you feel amazing, well then the actual nature of the deal itself, well, that becomes a secondary issue. Think of it this way. Think of how much money people spend to go to a spa. What does a spa actually do for them? It doesn't actually help feed them. It doesn't build their business. It doesn't educate their children. It doesn't develop their personal growth. And yet, people are willing to spend crazy amounts of money, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars at times, to go to a spa or some kind of retreat. Why? Well, what are these retreats called? Wellness retreats. They're paying all this money to feel well, to feel good, to reset, to get a sense that life is okay again, and that their place and role in life is good again. Now, why is this important? Because any place that you're an influencer, when you want to influence someone else, and you'll do it hypnotically, if you can give people the equivalent experience of being in a spa, well, suddenly everything else becomes secondary to that. Now, this is actually a very concrete, very important principle. For those of you who are salespeople who do high-level executive sales, so this is particularly true at the highest level of sales in an organization. Business there gets done on relationship first. The business elements happen afterwards. So here's typically how a business meeting will go with an executive you want to open a new account with, right? How are you doing, Jack? I'm doing good. How are you? Fantastic. Chat, interest. Where do you go to school? What did you learn? How are you enjoying the things here? What's your vision for the future? The one thing we would not be talking about is the product, the program, the service that I'm trying to offer. It is no horse trading allowed. In fact, no actual business talk is allowed in a high-level business meeting until one thing has been established, and that's the relationship. In other words, the person wants to know, the executive wants to know, are you the kind of person that I want to do business with? And how do you do that? Well, you establish well-being. You establish a natural rapport. You establish qualities about yourself within that conversation. But above all else, it is a feelings-based process, even for highly analytical people. Before they'll start looking at the horse trade of the deal, they'll want to know that their gut is in the right place, that they've got a good instinct about you, that you are the kind of person they can trust to do good business with. And of course that makes sense, because the deal in the traditional sense, the academic sense, that's what the conscious mind does. Am I getting what I need out of this? We're getting the right resources, yada yada. But the unconscious part of the deal recognizes, are you someone that I can trust? Are you someone who's going to stab me in the back? You're going to go back on your deal. Are you making me big promises, but I can't trust them? All that does not come out from the horse trading part of the deal, where you're talking about the features, the benefits, and so on. All that comes out of the relationship. And this is where hypnotic rapport shines. But more than that, if we take this principle into the actual deal-making process too, if we allow the emotions to be a core element within that, then you have the makings for powerful frames, powerful ways to influence and persuade others. Now you might ask yourself, why am I emphasizing all this so much? Well, here is a general rule of thumb that is, I think, pretty much true in a lot of cases, in most cases. And that is, in any negotiation, the higher the stakes are, the more unconscious the process needs to be. Let's think about the higher stakes negotiators. That's people where lives are on the line. We're talking about hostage negotiators for the FBI, the police, and so on. Well, these people know that when you're talking to a hostage taker, whether it's a terrorist or just a scared bank robber, they have to get through to the person first. Now, all the things about their demands and all the rest of it, all of that is secondary to building a relationship with that person, having the person feel heard, having that person feel something positive, that someone's on their side. When they do this, or rather should I say, when they can do this, when they can achieve this, they can make miracles happen. They can take someone who is ready to kill an entire room of people and get them to give themselves up happily for nothing else than, well, this is the right person, I feel safe in this person's hands. And that is high stakes negotiation at its best. Now the secret is, human beings are no different in different environments. The more is at stake here, the more you want to negotiate the same way, the more you want to have the same vibe about the other person. If you're buying a $5,000 car, it's different to buying a $50,000 car or a $500,000 car. The more expensive the car is, the more you need to know the person I'm dealing with here, well, they're on your side. You're not going to waste your money, you're not going to be taken for a ride, literally or figuratively. It's something that the unconscious mind has to be satisfied before you'll even move into discussing any terms of any particular deal. And of course, when we're talking about the unconscious mind in any part, we're talking about the emotions, we're talking about the down in the trenches schools of influence. Okay, so I want to leave you now with a simple hack, an idea, a concept that's really going to help you get towards the unconscious content in a negotiation. Now, in any negotiation, everyone's going to have goals. You'll have goals, I'll have goals, and then we'll negotiate and try and figure out the best fit between our goals. But remember, these goals are both conscious and unconscious. And of the two, your unconscious goals are always the more important. So how do we find these unconscious goals? What do we look for? Well, one thing you can be pretty sure of, you can bet your horse on, is that whatever they tell you is their goal is at best their conscious goals. Sometimes it's really not even a conscious goal, it's a smoke screen to test out the waters, see how you react before they give you their conscious goal. But even then, they'll have an idea in mind of something they want consciously. And that's what they're working towards. And here's the secret hack. Because that conscious goal, if it's been thought out thoroughly by them, well, they may not have much leeway. If I don't get this, that's it, I walk away. But there is a secret back entrance. There's a secret door that allows you to turn someone that's rigid and is unwilling to negotiate any further into someone malleable, saying, you know what, tell me more. I think you just got my attention. The secret here is that all conscious goals have underlying beneath them an unconscious goal. And that unconscious goal is typically nothing like the conscious goal that's expressed. So let me make an example here. What's a conscious goal? What's a classic conscious goal that people have? I want to get a better job at a big company and make more money. Great, that's a conscious goal. But what's the unconscious goal behind that? Well, depending on the person, it could be very different. One person, it might be status. I want to feel worthwhile. I want people to look up to me, and the more money I make, the more power I have in the organization, the more I feel like I've made it. Someone else might say, well, actually, I care about the wealth or the income because I want to give my family a certain quality of life. I want to provide for them. I want to protect them. I want to put my kids through school, through college, and so on. And so the price tag is particularly important to me. For someone else, it might be a question of control. It might be a question of, I don't want to have a ineffective middle manager bossing me around, telling me what to do all day. I want to be the boss of the boss so that I get to decide my own destiny, my own future. 3 completely different reasons for wanting to join an organization. And these are going to be sitting in the back of their mind. The vision that they have in their eyes is get the executive position, get the paycheck, get the title. But the reason underlying it is vastly different between each of them. So for example, if you are negotiating with someone who is all about the status, well, that person might be really happy with a higher title, but a lower pay grade. That might be enough for them. You don't know until you know what's really moving them, what their true underlying goal is, where their unconscious mind is stuck on. So how do you find someone's true goal in between all the shrapnel that comes out of their mouth when they talk about what they actually want, what they think they want, should I say rather? Well, rule number one is never believe what they're saying. That's just their conscious mind's conception of what it is. Rule number 2 is build hypnotic rapport, not just regular rapport, but hypnotic rapport. Why? In hypnotic rapport, people want to share their inmost secrets, their inmost desires, and their true goal is an example of an innermost desire. When someone expresses a conceptual goal, a logical, a conscious goal, like I want to work for this company, the more rapport you have with them, the more they'll slip out what their hopes and dreams are for this, that people will look up to them, that they'll be able to afford more things, that they'll be able to control their lives better and so on. These things will come out in conversation, both about the job in this case, or also in their life in general. Someone who's very family oriented, well, they'll talk a lot about their families, and you'll start understanding that there's going to be a relationship between job and family. Someone who's very status oriented, well, you better believe they'll be talking about things that are status oriented. And they'll share that with you. They'll talk about the celebrities they know, the parties they've been invited to, the awards that they have received. That tells you this person's more status driven. That also tells you that you can negotiate on a level of status with them if maybe an increased pay package is not an option anymore. What this does is it gives you the information you actually need to get to a true win-win, not merely a conscious, logical, reasonable win-win. So, if you haven't watched the Hypnotic Rapport video yet, go back and watch it again. You'll understand now one more reason why Hypnotic Rapport is so important. Assuming you've enjoyed this video and you've enjoyed the previous one as well, then I invite you to come back and join us for the third video in this series, where we're going to talk about something very important. Now that we have these core concepts in place, I'd like to talk to you about the 5 axioms of negotiations. These are the mental formulas, if you will, the logic, the reason, the machine, the programming that's going to make you into a negotiation superstar. So, join me back here for the axioms of negotiations. Until then, take care for now.